Good evening. With Labour's unexpected win at the Hamilton by-election, should the SNP be concerned ahead of the 2026 Holyrood election?
Thank you, Alf. Labour won the by-election with a swing of 7% from the SNP. Professor Nicola McEwan, it is a by-election. We're a year out from the Holyrood elections. What can we tell from that result?
So I think it's really important to note that by-elections tell us very little about the national picture, because turnout tends to be lower, the stakes are lower for voters, often they're used as protest votes, and they also enable parties to throw everything at it. Whereas in a national election, obviously the organisation is dispersed around the country. Having said that, I think the question was about the SNP and Labour, but I'm going to first of all turn to Sue, because I think the Conservative Party needs to be worried. And I think what the by-election suggested was essentially what we've seen in England, what we've seen in some council elections, is that the rise of the Reform Party is mostly at the expense of the Conservative Party. What it did suggest, though, is that the Labour Party appear to have held off a challenge from Reform in that by-election, whereas the opinion polls nationally suggest that Labour are at risk of losing support to Reform as well. The message for the SNP, I think, is not to be complacent, because certainly consistently national opinion polls have suggested that the SNP are round about 10 percentage points ahead of their closest rivals, which would, were that to be replicated in the elections next year, would be enough to win, but really quite significantly down on its level of support at the last Holyrood elections. There are lots of constituencies around Scotland where the margins are really tight. So I think what the by-election told us is that it may be a more competitive election next year than perhaps the national polls were suggesting, but it's a long, long way to go.
Well, you're going to be the voters next May, so I'd love to hear your analysis of this, where we are and where the SNP and Labour may be heading following that result. Brian Cox, why do you think the SNP lost Hamilton?
Well, I think there's a great dissatisfaction in the island. I mean, I'm talking about Britain. There is a great dissatisfaction about how we're governed, and I don't think we're governed correctly. I am moving slightly. I mean, although I still support the SNP, I'm moving more towards a federalist Britain. I think we need to be a more federal society where people are really represented fairly, and they're not quite at the moment. We just get one opinion versus another opinion, and we don't really see where it is in relationship to the center of the people. And I'm finding that, you know, because of course I live between here and the US, and I'm finding it really very odd that there's not a sort of more definite understanding of what's going on. And I think the people need to know, and I don't think they are knowing, because I think nobody knows what's going on. And the rise of Reform, the way that we're swinging more and more to the right is very worrying.
The first step towards federalism, Brian, would be independence.
Yes.
Are the SNP doing enough in your view?
Well, I think there's been a lot of I don't want to go into the details of the SNP of what I think they've been nobbled considerably. And I think that... By whom? Who knows? I think there's a hidden agenda at work. I really genuinely do feel that. I think there is very much a hidden agenda at work, and I find that very problematic and rather scary, quite honestly. And that's why the right wing are moving in a way that, I mean, Reform. Nigel Farage, for God's sake, you know, give us a break.
Should they be pushing harder? Should they be fighting harder on the independence question?
I think they should, but I think you know, they've been in power a long time, and any party who's been in power for a long time is always going to be suffering, you know, because of over-familiarity. You know, that's what happens. You know, that's the political state we're in.
Thank you. Let me go to the audience. Man with the glasses and the beard towards the back. Yes, on you go.
I feel that Reform are in the same position as Labour were in before the general election last year. They can promise anything, but it'll come We'll only know what they're really like once they get some power.
26% of the vote in the Hamilton by-election. Lady with the glasses, second row. Yes, on you go.
I was somebody who voted no in 2014 and watched the results coming in and regretted it before it was morning. And I feel that we were nobbled then and nobbled now. And I think that whenever there's a move towards independence, all the big guns are sent in to thwart it. And I also think we're not given a true financial picture. I think there's a lot of fear-mongering and also this perception that were we independent, we would have an SNP government. I don't think we necessarily would. I think we would have a far more representative government than we have at present.
Thank you. Man with the blue shirt, right in the middle. Yeah.
I think the SNP need to join forces with other independent parties so they can have a collective and push that message forward for next year and be better together for independence.
Thank you. Marie Todd, the question was, should the SNP be concerned ahead of the election? Clearly some people are concerned. The Herald has reported this week that 25 senior figures in the party met plotting the downfall of John Swinney if he doesn't move the dial on independence. Do you know who was at that meeting?
Oh, I have no idea. No, not at all. I mean,
Does that worry you?
No, it doesn't worry me at all. What I would say, I mean, John Swinney became leader of our party at a time he was asked to be leader by the party, and he has given us unity. He has given us...
well, he hasn't given you unity if there's 25 people meeting to discuss his potential downfall.
Well, I think what you saw, I mean, what you've seen over the last year is that he has a talent for bringing the party together. He also has a talent for bringing people together across Parliament. At the time that John Swinney became leader, we were told we were never going to manage to get a budget through the Parliament, and we've done that. And we've done that with the support of 2 other parties, and 1 party abstained. So we have managed to build coalitions to get this country governed well. John Swinney absolutely is the right leader for us, and over the year that he has been in leadership, he has stabilised the party, and over the next year, I am absolutely confident he will set out his vision for the future of this country. Now, I believe John Swinney has spent his life arguing and, you know, absolutely campaigning for independence. I firmly believe that Scotland's future should be as an independent nation, and we will set that out over the next year. We talked in the last question, we spoke about the Westminster government making decisions for Scotland in devolved areas, and we said that's the purpose of devolution. What I would like is for our votes in Scotland to count for everything. So I would like to have some control over immigration policy. Yep. I come from a part of the country where we have suffered depopulation for centuries. And this latest detail on immigration that the UK government have brought out has absolutely, will have a devastating impact on Scotland. I would like them to not make decisions that harm us.
What is different here is one of those who was supposed to be at this meeting, according to the Herald, said there's no energy, there's no fire, there's no boldness, there's no long-term strategy to win us independence. What do you say to people like that?
Well, look at the polls. So 54% of people in Scotland support independence. With the rise of Farage, which is happening before our very eyes, if he comes into power in the UK Parliament, which he may well do, because Reform did very well in that election, what you see is the support for independence going up to nearly 60%. I think we're making the case for independence very well. And we will absolutely, what we need to do is listen to people. I spent a lot of time on the doorsteps in Hamilton. I'm very disappointed with the result. I'm sad that we lost Christina, and I'm sad that we lost that seat. I have spent a lot of time listening to people over the last few weeks. I absolutely recognise the priorities that people have. We need to do better, and we need to deliver better
Right,
for
let's
people in
listen.
Scotland.
Let's listen to the people right now. Lady right at the back with great earrings on. There you go. Yeah.
Thank you. I just wanted to go back to Brian's point about the dangers of the rise of reform, although comparing the reform with Labour, I strongly disagree with. Reform are there as followers of the Trump agenda, there to do enormous damage to our democracy. And although I'm a very strong Labour supporter, I was very pleased to see John Swinney speaking up against the racism that they were displaying. So we really need to be very careful about that, and we really need to try and work together better so that we avert that danger of moving to the far right in Scotland.
Thank you. Lady with the blonde hair. Here, yes.
Hi. Is it necessarily an important decision to try fast-track independence now when we're in such a time of political upheaval with the rise of the right, and we're currently in such a dire financial situation within our country? So why should we try to push this forward now rather than wait until our economy is much more stable?
Brian?
We've waited a long time. We've been waiting, and we're still waiting, and we should stop waiting. Things should start to happen.
Marie?
One of the reasons we are in such dire financial straits is because we're within the UK. If you think about one of the most harmful decisions that's been taken over the last few years is the decision to Brexit. Scotland voted against that for very good reasons. It has made all of us permanently poorer. And that would not have happened if we were an independent country.
Okay. I'm going to come to you in a second, Stuart. Let me hear from the lady in the white top. Here, yes, on you go.
Good evening. I agree with the lady's point behind me and Brian Cox. What is going wrong with Scottish politicians that we're getting an influx of Nigel Farage and his merry bands up north? That must be concerning for all of them.
Yeah. Well, it's a concern for Sue Webber because Professor John Curtis says reform had your voters for breakfast, lunch and dinner in Hamilton. What's next on the menu?
I think we heard from Brian earlier on that when governments have been in power for a while, you often get sent a big message, and we got that message as a Conservative Party delivered in spades last July. We've still got an awful lot of work to do to get voters to start to trust us. And I think Russell Finlay, who is our leader in Scotland, is going about that in a very pragmatic, sensible way, and we will continue to follow that path. Common sense policies that actually resonate with people. We're not interested in the fringe issues that were capturing so much of the SNP's attention the first half of this Parliament, led by Nicola Sturgeon, whether it be hate, crime or the gender reform. So that's where we are, and we'll carry on with that message.
Thank you. Young man right in the middle here. Yeah, on you go.
The reason Reform UK are doing very well is because of the constant sneering and labelling of far right. Meanwhile, Nigel Farage is actually saying what a lot of people are thinking about immigration, about high energy bills, and the constant sneering is only going to bolster support from him. So the Scottish Government should actually just get on with making Scotland actually wealthy again.
It was interesting when you said